These are the people who sent me tank wagons. And everybody leave your mic on and we'll talk about things, and that's the best way to do it for me. I like that. These
Yes.
probably all came from Doug.
Yep, that's one I sent. That's
Notice the springs under the seat, so the guy rides pretty smooth. The other thing I noticed on these, that almost every one of them are Standard Oil Company. That must have been a big deal back in those days.
they were a major supplier. Yep. That's also one I sent. That's from somewhere in Iowa.
Yeah, the first of this will be all of yours.
Okay.
That's a pretty fancy one.
But it doesn't have the springs on the seat. It's got nice painting, but an uncomfortable ride.
Including a box for the axle grease for probably the steam engines. Well, this guy gets out of the weather, even rain anyway.
Yeah.
Mhm. He might have
Apparently that's
he might have a leather covered horsehair cushion seat.
Yeah.
that apparently is at the Henry Ford Museum.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's got a canopy that he's pushed back. Looks like streetcars lying underneath him.
Yeah.
Sure does. Yeah.
This picture was a good one you sent, and the fact that it has a couple of tanks, more than one. And if you look at the big number one there, they have three hatches on top, and that probably denoting three different kinds of product.
Yep. Typically it'd be kerosene, an early form of gasoline, and then it might, what was it that they used in
Desolate.
tractors early?
Desolate,
Yeah, distillate. Yep.
which is really a cheap form of kerosene, or close to
Mhm.
it. Now, pure oil, very unusual tank. I'm not sure what to say about it.
It looks like he's sitting directly on the metal.
Looks to me like that is a staged photo advertising for Pure.
Well, notice the truck behind. So it was
Yep.
probably done, what, in the 40s?
That would be a good guess, and I would agree it's a staged photo, a promos thing. I can't, the photo was not a very good one, so I couldn't quite make out the sign that was on the horse-drawn wagon. What it was, it might have been a parade item.
This came to me today, and I guess it's on its way somewhere between here and Grand Rapids. Pretty nice old truck.
That is a very nice, yeah.
And notice on the rear, there's three spigots there. And
Well,
if
you
you
got
look at the top, you can see there's three different tanks in there.
Yep.
So he would do just what you said, kerosene, gasoline, and distillate probably.
I wonder if the hoses were kept in the side in the wooden box.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be where they would be. So after that, we're going to get into some modern stuff. Some unusual tanks that Mont Switcher sent me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Notice that heating oil, diesel, kerosene, gasoline. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fancy one.
Oh, that's nice. Yep.
My guess is that they're fueling up Amtrak trains or locomotives.
I would say you're right, because that does happen in more isolated locations. They do the same with freight locomotives too, and
Well, in the case of Tama, that one locomotive was stationed there right behind the Neil's Creamery, and I'm sure they probably brought in the truck. Didn't I show a picture of that? Seems like I did.
Maybe you did, yeah.
There's a typical old Ford.
Yep.
Let me go back to that. You know, I think in the model world, there's a truck almost like that. Now, it's
I
not a
think-
tank truck, but it's the cab I'm talking
I
about.
think Revell did that in HO way back when.
I think so.
Oh,
You don't see many Dodges in the modeling world.
mm-mm. Oh,
Diamond T was before Rio, and then Rio and Diamond T combined, and now you got the Diamond Rio.
yes, and a cab over to boot. That's
That's a pretty big cab or truck under that fuel oil truck.
hmm. That Ford tilt cab is pretty popular.
Yeah. There you got a Chevy.
Hmm.
Kenworth. And I don't know what that is.
Oh,
And we end it right there. I believe that's the last one. Oh, no, you sent me that, Doug.
yes, this is a model by Al Brotherton from Muscatine. You've met him before. And he models 1910. So he used to buy all the Jordan truck kits, take the bodies off of them and put them on horse-drawn wagons. And then he'd build the truck kits and he'd put something else on them, and give them to me. But that's where he took a Jordan tank wagon and mounted it on a old wagon frame with a pair of horses. So
Yeah, pretty neat.
it's a nice model. Yep.
Okay, that's the end of that. Now, let me see if I can get the other one up.
Well, you're doing good so far.
Okay, this is, like I said, this is a lot of the same, but there are quite a bit of new things in here. People ask me about things, so I decided I ought to add them, and I tried not to use the same pictures. So when I was writing an article for the Milwaukee Society, and I met a guy in Williamsburg, and he told me after World War II, when he came home, he remembered they received one tank car of regular and ethyl gasoline in a 2-compartment tank car. And he said that was the absolute last car they ever received in Williamsburg by rail. So that kind of sets the tone for this. So most of us doing the 50s, some of us in the 40s, I guess we really kind of pushed the button a little bit by using tank cars to deliver our fuel. So I think, Doug, you got me in touch with Ken. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, he told me about kerosene as one of the last things they got. And I did not know anything about what water white kerosene was. It's a brand name. And there are 2 grades of kerosene. K1 contains less sulfur, it's clear, it's white. And K2, which has more sulfur in it. And I guess K1 is what you'd be using in a lamp. K2 is
But,
what
I can remember, in camping, they had the old Coleman stove and the Coleman lantern. You always bought Coleman white gas to burn in those appliances. So, and they were
I guess-
essentially a refined kerosene.
the
Yeah.
K2 is probably what we use to start the cook stove. What we would do is put in a piece of wood, put in cobs, and then take and douse it with kerosene and light it up. I mean, it worked like a charm.
Yeah.
So I found this nice picture of a really nice low pressure tank car.
Not seeing anything, Ron.
Oh, nothing's there.
No.
Nope. We have your happy face.
Wow. I don't know what to do because I'm looking at a tank car.
You gotta share your screen.
That's going to be a difficulty. Let me
You
go
can do
back.
it.
You did it before?
Well, let's see if this is it.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, this is going to start at the beginning. I'll have to, let's see. Oh, I see. Play from current slide. Very good.
Yes.
Now can you
There
see
you-
it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't know what happened. I probably pushed the wrong button. I was unaware that billboard tank cars went out in the 1950s. So if you're modeling in the 1950s, you're probably going to have to get rid of those Sinclair tank cars and anything else that has a billboard type lettering.
Why did that happen? What was their reason?
Yeah.
I hear a lot of silence out there.
I modeled 1949, so I can still run them. Thank you, Ron.
Did that did that happen for a reason? Was there a rule that changed or something?
Well,
It was billboard reefers. They did away with that type, the billboard, and it eventually applied to tank cars. It started with the reefer. If you remember, reefers were billboard for many years. I do not know the year, but there was
That was nice.
a ruling.
Yeah.
And they did away with the billboard lettering and then eventually went to tank cars too.
Yeah, the billboard reefer law came into effect in 34 and effectively banned everything in 38. And then they realized that it didn't really apply to leased, captive service cars. So we started saying the big lettering and things after World War II. I was not aware of the tank car ruling, so.
I think the website at the bottom is where I got that.
For
not
ProCap, I'll have
positive.
to look into that, yeah.
This, if you look at the placard here, kind of interesting. You see how it's turned half over? That means the tank is empty, but not completely empty.
Mm,
A residue in it. The other thing that a lot of guys don't, they use high pressure tank cars for their petroleum. And really what you want to look for is the vents. If they don't have the vents, they have a different kind of dome. And they probably shouldn't be used with your oil dealer. This one's down at the Museum of Transportation in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I saw how you break those up. There's actually 3 tanks. And then there's a shell on the outside that makes it look like 1 tank. And, but you can see where the rivets are. This being the end of that tank.
Yep.
And this being the start of the other, it's actually just airspace in here.
It's 2 ends that are in there sandwiched together.
Right. And the ends would be touching each other.
Yep.
And you'll notice they have a different kind of vent on there. That's an older style vent.
Yeah, and that's related to the capacity of the tank. The larger the tank is, at a certain point, it requires 2 vents instead of 1.
I think it's 8,000 gallons has to have two vents, anything over 8,000 gallon.
I'm thinking you're correct. Yeah.
So here was one being filled or emptied. I'm not sure which. From the, I call it unloaded loading. And Lloyd, if he's on here, Lloyd provided that picture. Interesting, the mobile gas, how it's printed in large letters.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an under the, they're disconnecting under the tank car. And you've got to make sure that it's grounded. and that you have a sign saying that do not move the car, a blue flag type sign, which is the next slide. And Doug, you sent me the one, Ken sent me another one.
Yep. Yeah, I got the one that's hanging in my basement. It was one that was used in Bondurant, Iowa at this Chicago Great Western unloading facility. And I bought it with a whole bunch of tank car routing cards and stuff.
My son-in-law worked for American Cyanamid, which was a chemical company. So I asked him about, the blue flag thing. Oh, he said, yeah, we had to put those things out every time we were unloading a car. And so, he did not have any pictures, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And here we talk about whoops, I guess I'm wrong. It's 6,500 gallon.
Oh, well,
Anyway, you can see the two valves. And
yeah. Now notice the car next to it with a man up there. Is that a chemical car with the platform?
I don't think so, because I think that there is probably back on here, there is probably some vents, but it's hard to tell there what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there a vent right in the center?
Right here you're talking about.
Center vent, yes.
That's a possibility, but that's a big car and should have two vents of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a really old picture.
Yeah,
He
and I
could
don't
be
know what-
though, he could be blocking a vent with his body in the photo.
I suspect he is, because this was probably at some where they were, filling cars up at some refinery.
Is that an Alco S2 in the background?
Probably. So this is what they look like for the different vents and things. Notice how you can turn the handle here, and this is underneath the car. And that's what
Mhm.
opens up the valve down there. And this is a little closer look at that. Of course, none of us really model that to any degree. I know that if you look at the old Athearn cars, why they do have a little stem down here, which is supposed to be the unloading chute.
Yeah, but after seeing these drawings, I'm
What I
sure
didn't
somebody
know
will show.
is the term inflammable. And I never heard of it before. And this was, if you model until 1960, you got to use the word inflammable. Your internet connection is unstable. Oh, there it went away. Must became more stable. So you can see the Transportation Act down there that required these placards. And I found this, one of the guys on a Group IO had this, and it's really difficult to see because I couldn't make it any bigger, but it does give you some kind of ideas. If you model 1930 is when they look like they changed, and that goes clear up to the 1960s, and it's almost exactly the same.
Mhm. But if you're modeling HO, you wouldn't read that small print anyway.
Just like I can't read it here. When you go to look for this thing, I had a hard time finding any of this. You find all kinds of information on hazardous material. I mean, there is just tons of that. But try to find these old things, it was difficult. And that's what one looks like it's a wood background, and you have to be able to fold the placard. So, okay, let's get up to the update. So we got a truck delivery here. No more railroad. There's a lot to this, and if you look at it later, why you can read it all, but this came from Mont about, he is in the transportation business of hauling all kinds of product. And he talks about different things and how it's very easy to have a place that the valves are not marked well, and you got to be really careful. And sometimes the pipes aren't properly or not even painted at all, which color coding, he says, helps. And anyway, there's quite a bit of information that he puts out. I'll wait just a minute if you want to spend another couple of seconds reading. Yeah, Doug, I did learn that 30 point was much better, easier to read than 24. In fact, my early ones were 12.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to cite, the source of a photo or something, an 8 or 10 or 12 point is fine. Particularly when a library or somebody requires you to do that. But if you want your audience to read it.
So I picked this one out because I thought I had one of the Milwaukee Official Freight Shippers Guide and Directory. And I just happened to look at Boone. And you can see the Milwaukee Road. I didn't realize that Milwaukee did that much in Boone, but they had 3 different dealers. And then you go, because it's a Milwaukee book, it does not tell you what the others were. I assume the others were Northwestern. But look at all the dealers in that town.
Yep.
And it
Yeah.
seems to be that way. A town will have a lot of dealers, then you'll go maybe 15, 20 miles before you get a whole bunch of dealers again. So we'll look at a little bit of storage tanks. And I had the question asked about when were dikes or berms required? And although you'll see some pictures that do not have any berm or dike, most of them do. And so apparently that's been around for a long time. I could not find any law, but people seem to think that it had to do with a state thing in the early years. That one, by the way, let me go back. That one is a cement block one. And here's one that's metal. So if you build one around your tanks, I'll show you a lot more different ones here when we get into them. And here's the 3 pumps. Notice there's no roof at all over that. So they got to all be waterproof stuff. All of these tanks don't have any ladders to the top. So they're all measured via some kind of a device like a Mormon device. Let's get to that. I thought this was a good picture because of the red, white, and blue dike around it and the style that goes over the top of it. Right? It looks like all the tanks are ready to fall over, but that in fact is the way the picture is. I could not, the more I straightened it up, the worse everything else looks. So I said, okay, I'll just leave it that way. But you notice his ladders going up. He had guardrails so that he could walk up on top of them without having to, he could walk right up there.
Yep. Yeah. And look at the weathering on those tanks. Wow.
Yeah. The other picture I have of this over here on the right, that's full of water. So, this thing has not been used for quite some time. I like this picture, and I think I've showed this before, just because look at all of the walkways. So everything on the right probably are older original tanks. Everything on the left, the 4 tanks or 5 that you can see, they all have some type of internal measuring device.
Yeah, you call
This
that a
one has-
Mormon?
Yeah, and this one has this one has the cement dike with the fence on top of it. which you see quite a few of those. I am not sure who I got that from, but it could have been Lloyd. But I lost the person I got it from. Now here's one with no dike at all, no fence. And you got walkways up there to do the measuring. You got a nice wood warehouse on the left. And the pump house is over on the right. And I think up on the embankment is probably where the railroad was, where they would unload cars.
Yep, that's looks like a coal hopper sitting up there behind the pump house.
That's at Norway, Iowa. You would know that.
Yep,
That would
we're
be on the
looking,
northwest.
we're looking north because the land slope on the south side sloped away from the tracks. And the north side, it kind of went uphill a little bit, so,
That's
I
on the
have a-
northwestern main line.
yep. Yep, I served I served the church in Norway. So,
Then we move up to Waterloo and look at the barrels. So if we are making an oil dealer, we ought to have a lot of barrels around.
yep, and look at the Conoco's signs sitting on the ground behind them.
Yeah. He took the sign down. He probably doesn't, he may not be a Conoco dealer anymore.
Yeah. Or they got replacement signs, so. And the barrels are all different colors, so it's
And we'll talk a little bit about colors of barrels that went toward the end.
okay.
The building in the middle there would be a pump house.
Yep. And then you get the standpipes right there along the tracks, right next to the chain link fence. That's for the unloading of the tank cars.
You notice there's just two of them.
Yep.
In some earlier ones, why you could see where the third one was cut off. Because up until about 1930 or so, a lot of kerosene was used. The underneath the tanks, you can see how they're held up with steel frames.
Mhm.
And of course, there's fences and a cement dike around it.
This is Waterloo. You got to protect things.
Oops. There's their warehouse. So I
Mhm.
moved, the picture moved around a little bit.
Yeah.
Tank truck at the back.
Yep.
I think that's the Berg Oil Company.
Yes, and he's still got the Conoco signs up there on the corners.
Yeah. I found this on a trip last year. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Concrete has really turned brown, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I think you'll find that the small tanks down there on the left still carry kerosene.
Yeah, the the two right here, right, Lloyd?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously brought in by truck.
Here's another one from Lloyd. This is a great picture. No berm at all, no dike at all. And again, I would agree, this probably is a kerosene tank.
Right.
And you've got all of the overhead walkway so they can measure the product. It's a pretty simple one. He's only got 3 tanks.
No, there's 4 there.
Oh, there's 4.
I see it now. You're right.
Yeah.
The one's a little shorter.
Yep. And you get, yeah,
And Jim Temple's on this list, and Jim worked for a petroleum company, and he did measuring of fuel. And this is quite a lengthy thing of what he talks about, how he had to do it. And they would drop a tape, he calls it, in there and with a paste on it, so that they could see how much water and stuff was on the in the bottom of the tank. And he goes on to talk about that.
Mhm.
Most of the tanks had a fairly large clean out towards the bottom of the tank that you could actually crawl through into that tank. You've seen that in several of the pictures.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I guess almost all tanks had some water in the bottom. It was because of condensation and stuff, it was difficult not to have any water at all in the bottom. That's why the pipe that they use to pump in, pump out is above what they consider the water line. So here is a good picture of how that Mormon gauge works. And what I didn't realize on these, I was looking at these as filling tanks and things. Here's the key. If you can see this particular elbow up here, you know that's not a normal elbow for fuel to go in. That's where this tape or chain travels. And you can
Yep.
see it over here, how it works.
On several of the tanks, the pipe would go down, come back up, come back down again to a sight glass that was covered with a short piece of pipe so that it wouldn't get broken. And you slid the pipe up the glass a little bit so you could read the level in the tank.
Ah,
So we'll talk a little bit about how the tanks were constructed. To the left, of course, is a single rivet. To the right is a double rivet tank. One being vertical, one being horizontal, but I don't think that makes any difference. And then you have one that's completely different. I guess that's welded, but it has I'm not sure exactly how to describe the ledge along here, but
That's the
the one on
seam
the
of the
left
two
looks like
halves,
the-
Ron.
The one on the
I
left
guess
looks
it's-
like, a-
That's the seam, I think, of the two halves, and then when they're welded together. Those are the
Yeah.
seams.
that would be the word I wanted. Thank you.
it looks like the
Ron.
Walters kit. So,
This one's
Ron,
all
you'll
welded
notice
over here.
the tank level here. Here is that short piece of pipe that you would lift up to expose the sight glass itself.
Right in here where I've got the cursor.
Right. You can see that, and you can see this one over here, and you can see this one over here.
There's three of them on here.
mhm. Mhm. And they're on concrete pedestals.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit too.
Okay,
In fact, that's right where we're at now.
there we go. Yeah,
Notice on the left, they're individual concrete. The one on the right is, some of them are really tall, high. And it's interesting what the shades of concrete are. One's quite white while the other one is quite brown.
one on the left's have been painted, the one on the right's never been painted.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Also notice that there is a pad between the steel tank and the concrete.
Whoops,
Mhm.
wait a
Yep.
minute. I know what happens here. I'm moving this thing and it's, okay. Right here, you can see the black. That's what you're talking about, Lloyd.
Right, and over
There's
here
one
on
over
the
here,
right
too.
especially.
It may
Yeah.
show up better on this one.
It's interesting how the water runoff stains that concrete too.
Right.
mhm. Yeah, and the pad would be so that as the tank expands with heat or contracts, it won't scratch itself on that concrete and cause a place for rust or deterioration.
Now, here's something I missed before, but notice this is concrete down here.
Hmm.
Almost all of them are just plain gravel or dirt.
Yeah,
We poured a few of these at the Valparaiso Service Center on Highway 30, that's for Ken Huff. And the one on the right is the type that we poured for transformer oil. And we basically made a form and then backfilled that form with dirt as high as, I think it's like 8 feet high. And then it was, I forget how many tons of dirt that we put. It was like 20 feet out of dirt and packed it in to hold when we poured the concrete. And if you look on the right side, there are little styration lines horizontal. That would be where the boards would be in the mold, which is basically 2x12s.
And here's, I think this one's really neat because it's brick.
Yep.
I bet you don't find many of those.
And
Mm-mm.
and you got a concrete tank, or I mean, a kerosene tank over here on the right, left.
A little sharp,
Yep.
a little one down here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, this is steel angle iron. And then over here is one solid piece. I can tell you this little short, I don't know how tall this berm here is on the right. It isn't very tall. It's not going to hold a lot. You can find these by just Googling in vents and manholes. I just put a few of them up here to take a look at. So, I mean, and there is an infinite number of them.
Here's this clean out plate that I mentioned a little earlier.
The
You
one
take
over
that
here,
plate off and you can actually climb into that tank, clean it.
notice this one, it looks like it's wood. I think I got another picture of it. So here we're going to talk about those. Okay. So I think this one is wood. Here we got one that's regular metal. This one's earth and gravel, concrete block, none at all, and poured concrete. Now, in the industry, I guess they call them dikes, but most people would call it berms, I think.
That one on the upper right looks like it's not even a berm. It looks like it's all filled in with earth.
I don't think so. I think that there is some shallow there. I'm not sure. I agree with you what it looks like.
You sure it wasn't filled with sand?
Oh,
And that is growth on top of the sand to absorb leakage?
Could be.
We used to fill ours in with gravel,
Gravel?
and you have to keep the weeds down, because the weeds would, as soon as they start taking hold of it, that gravel goes away pretty quick. It becomes dirt pretty quick. I don't know where it all goes, but and the height of the dam or the dike would depend upon how close the nearest water was. If you were close to a creek, you'd have a pretty high dike. If you were out in the middle of a field, they didn't care that much.
This one down here, which has gravel on it, happens to be in Michigan City, and I know the inside of that is gravel. So I made a diagram of how a pump works. This is typical, but I mean, everybody has got a little bit different. There is no, what should I say, standard in it. But by just changing the valves, you pump things to load the tank or unload the tank and load the truck. And this one is loading a truck. Jared sent me this one. This was out in Kansas. I thought it showed things pretty good. It got one electric motor, but it's got a transmission that runs the two pumps. And I believe those to be reversing levers, or, you can turn it into neutral or run them the other way around. You gotta have some pump houses. The one on the right has got all kinds of pipes going all out of it. Some of the other ones just, you don't know where the pipes are. They're either right above. I don't think they're in the ground. I think most pipes are visible if you're there, because I don't think they like to bury any pipe where they can have a leak and not know about it.
A lot of these facilities, Ron, had the unloading pipes. One would be painted red for the gasoline grades. The other one would be green for the fuel oil and kerosenes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
The ones we're looking at here, most of that, the paint's been rusted off.
I probably had the coloring on a different one I did because I think I'm running out here. Anyway, so this is in the truck area, and there's a couple of pictures of trucks here. I thought that one was a pretty good looking truck, which we would have called gas trucks or something like that, but in the industry, it's tank wagons. I just like that picture. I don't know. A lot of our models are too flat. So I got to thank all these people who sent this to me. Apparently, the other one I did had something about color of barrels and color of pipes, which this particular one does not. But that would be on the very first one I did, not what we were talking number 2.
The pictures, Ron, that you shown on Norway, the unloading pipes there, one was red, one was green.
If we have a minute or two, I'll just run back, okay?
No, you didn't show it.
Oh, I did.
That particular slide you did not include.
Okay. I'm afraid that's the end of my program.
Very good. Thank you,
Very
Ron.
good, yeah.
Very
Interesting,
informative.
good pictures.
Hey, Ron,
Yeah.
when you described the rivet construction of the barrels, you have what when you build a boiler or build a tank like that, it's either a lap seam, a butt strap, a double row butt strap, construction. And a lap seam is where one piece of sheet metal goes over the other, and it's put together by overlapping, and then with 1 or 2 rivets on it. And then a butt strap is where the tank, the sheet metal comes together, and then over the top of that is is a strap that will have 1 or 2 rows, actually 2 or 4 rows of rivets surrounding it. And then you have chinking. You heard of that?
No.
Chinking is where you put a material similar to, oh gosh, it's almost like a heavy twine that wraps around between the rivets and compresses to keep it from leaking.
I didn't find any that other than the ones that the pictures that I found were the only type of construction that I found. I mean, the other type may be older, or I just didn't find any pictures of those.
Did you find any evidence of underground tanks in your searching of bulk plants?
Not for a bulk tank.
Okay, we had them in our town, and the local newspaper in 1910 said we won't be having any more eyesores above ground for oil tanks.
Of course,
And
yeah,
they got put underground, and then about, I guess it was 25 years ago, the sewer system took a leak of something, and we smelled gasoline throughout the entire town, coming up through the toilets in the basements.
when I was a kid, we lived in Gladstone. And on the north side of Highway 30 was a small gas station. And we lived on the south side. And our water started tasting funny. And pretty soon we decided, there must be gasoline in this. You could take a pan of water and you could actually light it up.
Oh, Jesus.
God.
Opa.
And obviously that gas station building, we had a new well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Was it a Clark company?
No, it was an independent, just a little country store.
Oh, they were in Valpo here. They were very quick to blame the Clark gas station on Lincoln Way because the gas would have run downhill. what it turned out to have happened was and they used the term gypsy trucker. I love that term. A gypsy trucker came into town and he opened up his drain of his tank after he dumped some of it at a refinery. He dumped the rest of it in the gutter in town.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
when I was in the telephone business, we had generators in each one of the offices. And we had a couple that were natural gas, but most of them were diesel. And we had a lot of buried tanks. And the government came along, with the ruling that if you had a buried tank, you had to have it was a double walled tank so that you could monitor if there was any leakage in the main tank. So we dug them all up and got rid of them. And that was a real process. And there were some stories behind that. And from that point on, all of our diesel tanks were in concrete vaults with a metal tank inside the concrete vault.
Oh, yeah.
You could test if it leaked by an opening in the concrete.
Sure.
Any more questions?
Mm-mm.
Now I
Well-
know everybody needs to go back and remodel their petroleum dealer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for presenting today, Ron. And we are on for next week, but we don't have a presenter yet. So if you are interested, let me or Ron know and we'll get you on this calendar. But thanks everybody for showing up. Whoa, look out. Thanks everybody for showing up tonight and have a great night and weekend.
See you next
Okay.
week.
All right,
All right.
Thank you.
thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron.